Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started with the webinar now. My name is Jill Bastian, and joining me today is Megan Buell.
Hello.
And we're going to be going over how to test and segment your list for success. Just a couple of things before we get started. This webinar is about 20 to 25 minutes long, and at the end, we'll be happy to take any questions that you have. From past experience, we've found that although we're trying to do some webinars that are shorter, we end up having a lot of questions. So we'll be happy to answer questions at the end. If you look at your GoToWebinar window, there's a box where you can type in questions. Feel free to ask questions along the way, and at the end, we'll answer as many as we can. As I said in the past, we tend to have a lot of questions, so you can stay for as long as you like to hear the answers to the questions. You can leave at 10:30, which is when this is scheduled to be over, or stay longer and listen if there's more questions. Also, the number one question that we always get whenever we do a demo or webinar is this being recorded? And the answer is yes, it is. After the webinar is over, we'll send out a follow-up email with some more information on using our system, as well as a link to the recorded version of this. So you can take notes as we go along, but you'll also be able to see this at a later date. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So this is our agenda for the day, or for the morning anyway. We have a different agenda in the afternoon. So we're going to go over the do's and don'ts of testing your list. What to test, so different parts of your email campaign that you can test to see what kind of results you're going to get. We'll go through a recap of the different things that we've covered this morning. I'll do a demo of our segmentation tool, which will help you with your testing. And then, as I said, at the end, we will have a Q&A. So let's get started here, Megan.
All right, guys. Good morning, everyone. So first, we're just going to talk briefly about the do's and don'ts of testing. So you definitely want to take some risk when you're testing your emails. And you can, really think outside of the box of what you think might work and what you think may not work. So if you're really going for something far-fetched, then just split your list up by 80-10-10 or 80-20. If you just want to test, something outside of the box on a small sample and see how it works, that's a great way to do it. You don't always have to test your emails by 50-50. So definitely take advantage of grouping them into smaller lists. Of course, list size, if your list is only 10 people, probably splitting your list up by 80-10-10 isn't really going to give you an accurate result. So you do want to make sure that your list is statistically relevant, or your list size, I should say. So make sure that you're testing a good chunk of your recipients. Also, decide what you want to improve on right up front. So if you're looking to improve your click-through rate, your open rate, your conversion, or your unsubscribe, you want to decide right off the bat what you're looking to improve and test that. If you're not really sure, you just kind of want to test and see what happens, I would start with your open rate. It's kind of, I think of it as the top of the funnel for your email. So start there and then kind of trickle down. Maybe then check your, or test your click-through rate, then test your conversion. And if you're worried about your unsubscribe rate, if you think it's too high, you can, of course, test that as well. So some things that work for one company may fail completely for another company. So as we say in marketing, the two magic words are "it depends." It's going to depend on your industry. It's going to depend on your brand. It's going to depend on your company as to what works for you. It's going to be different for everybody. So keep that in mind. If you're talking to a colleague or something that owns a small business as well, and you guys are talking about what you're doing for your email, it may be different for that person than it is for your company. So just take everything with a grain of salt and just test what works for you. Also, once you start testing, test the same thing a couple times. The first time you test something, if you don't really see a big difference, if maybe you're testing your subject line and your open rate is pretty much the same, test it again on a different audience, or change one of the subject lines a little bit and see what happens. Just because it doesn't work the first time doesn't mean it's not going to work the second time. Your don'ts. So don't test too many things at once. You don't want to be testing your subject line and your headline and where your call to action is all in one email. Otherwise, you're not really going to know what's going to be effective and what's really changing the statistics of your email. Don't divide your list up by more than 2 to 3. At the top there, you see I said split your list by 70-30 or 80-10-10. I wouldn't do more than, I wouldn't go 60-10-10-10-10-10 because it's just, it's too much and it's too much to focus on. It'll make your life a lot easier. All right. So what to test in your emails? First, we're going to go over the open rate. Um, if you want to test your open rate, the first thing to start with is your from name. So this is really going to depend on the type of company you are and how people recognize you and your brand. So for most people, I can almost guarantee that your open rate is going to be a lot higher if you use your company name versus a person's name. Now, exceptions to that rule would be like a real estate agent or a doctor's office or some type of business where people really recognize like the sales associate or one of the executives or whatever. But for the most part, your company name is going to be most effective. But if you're not sure, definitely go ahead and test it. You definitely want to test your subject line, and this is really easy and can be fun to do. Different ideas for you is test a long versus short copy. So, I've been noticing a lot of companies out there are using really long subject lines. And, it works for them probably because they keep doing it. Other companies, it's going to be short and sweet. That's kind of our motto here: is short and sweet. Keep it, very simple, and just get them to open up the email. You can also test how you say your promotion within your subject line. So you'll see here I have an example of Living Social Deals and Groupon, which are kind of two similar ideas or types of company. And Living Social Deals uses 50% off candy bar. Groupon uses half off at Bombay Indian restaurant. So, just depends on what works for them. But this is something definitely to test.
Whoa, whoa. Why does this always come up in the middle of a webinar?
Sorry about that, guys. Then also definitely test personalizing your emails or your subject lines. I've been seeing this more and more, and I just think it's a great tactic. It really catches somebody's attention. Some people might not like it. They may think it's a little stalkerish or something, but I think it's great. It's very effective for me. If I see my name in a subject line, they're obviously taking the time to make sure that they're personalizing their emails and really trying to catch my attention. So, try that. See if it works for you or not. Then there's the thought of either having a clear call to action in your subject line or just a description of your offer. So you'll see here in my example, we've got the Giants and the Athletics, two of our baseball teams here in San Francisco or the Bay Area. And the Giants decide to use more of a call to action type of subject line, where Oakland Athletics tried a more of a descriptive. So here again, test and see what works for you. You might find that both are just as effective, and then you can kind of decide, well, okay, if both are just as effective, what do I like more? What do you think, works better for your brand and is more of your brand? And then kind of test. If you decide that your call to action is the way you want to do it, then test a different type of call to action or how you want to say that call to action. So you can also change your subject lines based on your audience and test this. So, say you segment your list and you have all male recipients in one list and all female recipients on another list, you may test to see if a different subject line works for the different audiences. So, definitely segment it based on kind of who you're trying to reach and change it up a bit. You can add a sense of urgency and test this in your subject lines. Some people may like the sense of urgency. It really gets them to open up the email and check it out. Other people might say, I don't want to be pressured, and they may just get fed up. So it just depends, again, on your audience and what works for them. You also want to test your frequency of send. Um, this is going to definitely affect your open rate. If you're sending too much, people aren't probably going to open your emails as much. If you're sending too little, they may get kind of unfamiliar with your brand, and they may not open your emails either. So definitely test and see what works for you. Same with day and time of send. This is always something easy and simple to test, and a great thing in vertical response is you can actually see when you're sending your emails when people are actually opening them and reading them. So that'll give you a great idea of when your emails should be sent. So click-through and conversion rate. This is going to depend basically on the content of your email, your offer, and your call to action. So you want to test probably for your email content first, long versus short copy. Some audiences may like a really long email, and some people might like just a short email. You also want to keep in mind in a newsletter, of course, it's going to be a longer email. If it's just a promotion for a sale or an event that you have going on, probably a shorter copy is going to work. So keep that in mind. Clear and simple. You want your emails to be clear and simple. The body and the content of your headlines should just really tell the recipient um, what they're going to get out of the email. But test out, the content and test out what people are reacting to. A testimonial versus no testimonial. I am a firm believer in having a testimonial in your emails. Especially when you're sending to a group of people that maybe just signed up for your email list and aren't very familiar with your brand and maybe don't really realize how credible you are at this point. Definitely include a testimonial and see how that works, if that increases your conversion rate. Um, sometimes it can really be that extra straw that gets somebody to buy. So your offer, this is kind of like the subject line. Again, you can test the percent versus dollar off, free versus reduced or complimentary, and include a time limit or a sense of urgency and see what works. Your call to action, this is going to depend kind of on how you state your call to action, how many call to actions you have in your email, the placement. So test all that out and see if it's working. Now, of course, like I said earlier, you're not going to test all this out in one email. But kind of pick one or two things and see what works. And you can also, once you've sent the email, check what links are getting clicked on most. So that's how you're going to decide what's more effective in your emails. You're going to look at your links once you've sent your email in the reporting tool, and you're going to see, okay, this link was clicked on most. It's probably a great, call to action. You can look at, versus send an email that has all button call to actions. You'll see here that we have the find out more as a button, and then we also have just a text call to action, which is find out more. We did a test a while back and found out that buttons are a lot more effective than just the text link.
For our recipients.
For our recipients, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be like that for you. So test that out. And like I said, just go into your reporting tool, look at your links, and see what's more effective, see what people are really reacting to. So your unsubscribe rate, this is going to depend on your from label, your subject line, whether or not your recipients really remember who you are, remember when they sign up for your list, how often you're sending your list, and whether you're personalizing your emails or not. So again, your from label, like I talked about earlier, is either going to be your company name or a person's name. Test it out and see if it affects your unsubscribe rate, because it's not only going to affect your open rate, but it will affect your unsubscribe rate. If people do not recognize you at all, then they're probably going to unsubscribe from your email, which will give you a great idea as to what you should use for your from label. Same with your subject line. If you're using something a little misleading in your subject line, people will probably unsubscribe from you, and you will find that out very quickly. So definitely best practice is not to have something misleading in your subject line, but test it out. Some people may react to a certain type of thing. Sorry, Jill's telling me I need to hurry. I'm rambling, sorry. Anyways, so then remind your recipients of who you are when they signed up for your email list right off the bat, because that will definitely decrease your unsubscribe rate. Your frequency, like we talked about earlier, don't send too much, don't send too little. Test what works for you and works for your company, and then again, personalize your emails and see how that works for you. So, comparing your results using the VR dashboard. This is such a great tool, and we'll go over it a little bit more, but you want to definitely compare your lists and compare your emails so you can actually see, you can put emails side by side and see which ones have higher open rates, higher click-through rates, etc. You can see what has a better conversion. You can look at your links and see what links are being clicked on the most. So definitely use this to your advantage, and continue to track your results over time and keep on testing. Keep on testing. I can't exaggerate that enough. So just a recap of your testing strategies. We do call it the bizarre world of email testing. It is a real thing. Some things are going to work for you one day and they're not going to work the next. So that's why we say keep testing. Once you find something that works, though, stick with it until it stops and then test again. Different audiences react differently. I've said this multiple times in the last few minutes, and don't ever forget it.
Wow.
And never stop testing and keep it fresh.
So this is some resources that are available from Vertical Response. I'll probably come back to this slide when we're answering the questions so that you can mark some of these down if you want to. But the VR Marketing Lounge is a great resource. It's full of people who are using Vertical Response, and they have lots of insight into email marketing and whatever. So you can go in there and talk to them about testing and email marketing. Our help site has lots of resources on helping you with your reporting and using the list segmentation tool, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. Our blog.verticalresponse.com, has lots of great email marketing tips, including how to do testing, what to test, and things like that. We have a great guide coming out tomorrow. Don't go looking for it today, but tomorrow there will be a new guide on what we're doing right now, testing for your emails. So you might want to go take a look at that on our guides page. And then we do have some buttons that you can use for your call to action. It's something that we get asked a lot when we do this particular webinar, so I've included that on here. It's on our blog. And like I said, I'll come back to this as soon as I do the demo, and I'll start taking questions, and you guys can take a look at this page again. So let's go ahead and take a look at Vertical Response account. So Megan talked a lot about segmenting your list to do your testing. And so what I'm going to show you here is some of the ways that you can use our segmentation tool to split up your list or lists to create that more targeted list that you want to send your tests to, or just to break your list up into the 70-30, 80-20 splits to do some of your testing. So first of all, I'm in the list section, so you just go to lists and then click on segments, and that will bring you to our list segmentation tool. To get started creating a segment, just click New Segment, and much like creating a list, the system will kind of walk you through this. And you can save your segment if you want to run it at a later date. So you can include a description if you like. So now I'm going to go to Choose Segment Type. So there's a number of things that you can do with our list segmentation tool. It's a pretty powerful tool, and I'm just going to kind of go over some of the things that you can do with it here today. But you can certainly test it out. There's no limit to the number of lists you have in your account, so you can kind of test it out and see how it works for you before you start actually testing your email campaigns with it. So the first option is segment just by your list members. So that would be anyone who falls in any of your mailing lists. You can segment by campaign recipients. So people who have received an email campaign from your vertical response account, at least one campaign or however many you've sent out, you can segment your list by that. So you can segment it by people who've opened your email. So you could set up a specific time frame for that, or people who have clicked a link in a certain email campaigns. And you can create a more targeted list that way to send an email, maybe giving a different offer to the people who are more engaged, who click on the links in your email. The advanced segmentation tool will allow you to create a mailing list based on both the list members and the campaign recipients, as well as giving some other operators, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And then at the bottom, you can merge list members or you can merge campaign recipients into one mailing list, and then you can use that to send out your email campaigns. So right now I'm going to do segment list members only and click Save and Build Segment. And this is where you're going to be able to select your list. You can select one list. You could select any list that you want. So let's go ahead and take this particular list, and then I'm going to click Done. So my first example, I'm going to split my list up to do testing. So I'm going to show you how to split your list into 70-30 or 80-10-10 to do your testing to see how your results are. So in order to split my list, you don't need to put any kind of filter in here. So just ignore the filter part for this. Click Save and Get Results. It's going to show a snapshot of what the list is going to look like, but we're not doing any filters, so it just shows the list. Did I not click that? It felt like I clicked it. So this is the place where you get to select how you want to break your list up. So by default, it's going to create a single list for whatever your segment is. But what we're going to do here is click Multiple Lists, and then you're able to select how many lists you want this to be. So if I wanted to do 70-30, I can do percent, so that's what I would like to do for this particular example. And I can do 70 and 30. Our system keeps track of what it is. So here's 100%. And this will create two different lists for me. And I can send out my test subject line to the 30% and send my regular subject line that I would normally send to the 70, and then see which one gives me a better result. Or, as we said, you can also do 3. And in this one, I'm going to do 80, 10, and there we go. So now I have 100% of my list allocated, and it's going to split my list into 3. So you can test out different things. So maybe what you want to do is test out 2 different subject lines, and you can send one subject line to one list of 10, one subject line to another list of 10. See which one gets you a better open rate, or what, with the subject line, it probably would be open rate that you're testing. See what kind of open rate you get. Whichever one gives you a better one, you can send that to the majority of your list and see if you have a better open rate overall for your email campaign. So there's some different things you can do with splitting your lists up for your tests. So if I then click Create Lists, this is going to set up 3 new lists for me, and they're called September Segment 1, 2, and 3. So if I go and view mailing lists, I can go take a look at them, and here they are, ready to go. So this is 80% of my list, and then these are 2 lists of 10% for doing my test. So let's go back to the segmentation tool. And this time, we're going to go do something a little more advanced. So I'm going to select list members and campaign recipients and click Save and Build Segment. So with the advanced segmentation, you can split your list up into, or you can create a list based on information from one list or campaign, and then you can add or subtract based on the lists that you're setting up. So let's give you an example instead of me just talking. So here we'll add a list rule. So what I'm going to do is grab this list and click Done. And now I'm going to add another list rule. Now you'll notice when I do this, I now have something that's going to change how my segmentation is built. So not only am I going to have people who fall into this particular list, but now I can control how this information works with this second list. So I could take this list, for instance, So I can set up filters in here and then have my list be people who fall into this or this. But I can click on this and I can change it to and. And the other thing that you can do, if you click it one more time, is exclude. So if you wanted to create a list that has certain people who are not on the mailing list, you can do it this way. A lot of times people want to do a suppression where they're suppressing email addresses in their account. Instead of doing a suppression, which requires some work on your side, and you have to remember to remove the suppression. If you don't, those names will never be mailable in your account, so they've effectively been unsubscribed if you don't change it. By using the list segmentation tool, you can create a list that excludes certain lists or certain campaign members so that you don't have to do a suppression, but you also know that they're not going to be receiving the email. So what would be an example of this? So you could be sending out an email to an event, and you want to send out an email to remind the people who have yet to sign up that the event is coming up and they can still sign up. So you want to take the list that you mailed to, so we have our list set up here, and then you can exclude the people who have already responded to your email. So if they're clickers on your email campaign, then you can exclude them from your list so that you know that you're going to be creating a mailing list to people who have um, already, or you're sending an email to people who have not signed up for your event. So that's a great way for you to be able to create a very specific list without having any effect on the rest of the mailing lists in your account. Another thing that you can do with this, so I could create a mailing list of people who are in a certain city. So let's say San Francisco. And let's try. So any information that's found in your mailing list, any of the fields that are in your mailing list, you'll be able to use for the filters when you're creating your list segmentation. Oops, I already have that. And you can continue to add as many filters in here as you like. So what I can do is create a mailing list here of people who live in the Bay Area, essentially. But you'll notice when I'm setting this up, by default, my operator here is and, which would not make sense in this particular case because nobody would live in San Francisco and Oakland and Berkeley. So most people will only live in one city, so we would want to change this to or. And by changing it to or, it changes it for all of the filters that are on this particular rule that you've created. So this is going to create a mailing list of people who are in this list who live in the San Francisco Bay Area. And as I said, any of the data that's found in your account for your mailing list can be used for creating filters. So you can see if you look on here, I have some custom fields that I've created in the past, wine and wine type, and those are ready to go for this as well. And then instead of excluding, we can have and we can take this list and we can say company equals, and you could put a company name, or you could have it say customer equals yes, so people who are actually customers would be part of my mailing list. Or I could exclude them and just invite people who are potential customers to come to my event. So let's go ahead and go back to the segments and create one more new segment, and then we'll start taking some questions since it's 10:30. And we'll go ahead and take a look at what you can also do with the campaigns. So as I said, you can create a list based on campaign results. Now, when you send out your email campaigns and you're looking at the reporting in your account, from the list details section, you can create a list from there, or I'm sorry, the campaign details section where you can see who's opening your email, who's clicking on links. You can create a mailing list from that part as well. But if you wanted to create a list that included results from more than one campaign, then you would probably want to use the segmentation tool. So from the reporting, you could create a list based on one email campaign. So you could have like a list of non-responders that you create from one email campaign if you wanted to mail to them again. Maybe try a different subject line or something like that. If you wanted to send to a list of the non-responders from the last 3 email campaigns, for example, then you would want to use the segmentation tool. So you'd come in here and select whatever newsletters you wanted to use for your segment. And then you can add filters if you want. And since this is for email campaigns and not lists, there's additional information you can use for your filters, for setting up the query parameters. So you have opened, clicked, converted, did not open, did not click, did not convert, as well as the additional fields that we would normally include, our default fields. So if you select clicked, you can have any link, or you could specify a particular link, and you could even have a date range. So you can make a very, very specific mailing list based on the information from your email campaigns. Now, the way this is set up, the operator is an and. So in order for these people to be in the mailing list as openers, they would have to have opened all 3 of these newsletters to make it into the list. But you can see there's a lot of things that you can do with this particular option in your email, for your email testing as well.